knew I'd been in the water down there. And the event itself, but it was in there. I think over the years that memory surfaced from time to time, and I found myself looking back and thinking, did I imagine that, or was that real? And then as I got a little older and became aware of all of the other events in my life that happened where I should not have lived, that surfaced again and again, that event.
Well, you've told me that you know, can you describe some of those incidents in which you lived and others didn't? And you don't have to go into too much depth, but just to give people a taste of what you're talking about. What do you mean by that?
If I lived where?
Well, you said in some cases you were in a military situation in which all the people around you died, and you did not. Can you describe a couple of those?
Well, I can remember one. I was an infantry platoon leader. I was a second lieutenant when I got to Korea, 1951. I led an infantry platoon in combat, 32nd Infantry Regiment, 7th Infantry Division, in one of the god and most awful bloody wars that we've ever had. They refer to Korea as the Forgotten War. But for those of us who were there, and there aren't a hell of a lot of us left, we've never forgotten. We never forgot it. There was one time we're on an attack, and we know that we were going to engage a Chinese division. Now, the Chinese had come into the war in 50. At the end of the year in 1950, you've heard about the winter there, and the Chosin Reservoir events and all the rest. Well, thank God I wasn't in there, but when I arrived, the Chinese were in full commitment to the war. And there was a fresh Chinese division in front of us, and we were attacking that division. And we're moving forward through a pine forest in the mountains, and I hear music. And I thought, my God, what the hell? Where's the music coming from? One of my favorite pieces was the Grieg Piano Concerto. And I'm hearing the Grieg Piano Concerto. Well, my company runner, or my radio man, comes up. He says, Lieutenant, he says, where the hell is music coming from? I hear music back there. And I says, I hear it too. Go find out if any of those nitwits in the outfit have gotten a radio or playing a tape or something, you know. Because here we are moving forward into an attack that turned out to be one of the bloodiest we'd ever had. I lost about a third of my platoon that day. And there's some music being heard. Grieg Piano Concerto, one of my favorites. We got into combat. Well, my runner came back later and he says, Lieutenant, nobody's got a radio. Nobody's playing a tape. And he heard the music too. And we went through this mess, lost a bunch of kids. After it was all over with, I'm thinking about it. I didn't get a scratch. Where the hell did the music come from? Was I fantasizing? Well, I couldn't have been, because my radio man heard it also. Company runner heard it. Small event. There was another event later that involved sitting around a fire after a day's activity. And about 6 of us. I get up to take a pee. I'm a step away, 20 feet. A mortar round comes in, lands right on top of the damn fire, kills everybody. I'm unscathed, untouched. In Vietnam, another case, helicopter. There were about 6 of us in the chopper, plus the true crewman. And we're choking away, and, you know, not very high, maybe 600 feet. And I look down and I see holes in the floor of the helicopter, and there were no holes in it when we got in it. Holes in the floor. And I looked at somebody and said, there were no holes in the floor of this damn thing. It was a Huey. When we got in it, he said, no, there sure as hell weren't. The next thing we know, AK-47 round got into the engine, froze the engine up, down we went, the copter crashed, burst into flame. I was the only survivor. Forgive me, the memories are vivid. I walked away unscathed. Well, over the years I began putting two and two together, and not being terribly bright, but not being stupid, it began to dawn on me that something's going on here. And it's tied in with that event when I was 3 years old. And it's been going on and on and on and on. Well, they finally got to me. They finally got to me, and I began to realize, hey, when I incarnated on this planet, I must have come for a purpose. Not just to have a good time, you know, jollies and all, but I must have come for some reason. Well, then a series of face-to-face meetings took place between me and them. And I must tell you and make it very clear, I've never been abducted, because that's not a word I use. Literally, I have been invited. And
are you saying that you were having these meetings while you were in the military?
To some degree, yes, but not as blatantly and openly as it happened later. My face-to-face confrontations with them have been pretty regular in the last 20 years. And that's not an accident in itself. Because when I started speaking openly and bluntly about the extraterrestrial presence in 1991 in Tucson, Arizona, and violating my national security oath in a big way, that's when the overt, blatant face-to-face meetings began to take place.
So did the meetings happen, in other words, I'm wondering if the meetings spurred you on to disclose, or whether or not you decided to disclose and then suddenly you're having face-to-face meetings.
A great deal of both.
Okay.
My decisions, I think, were based basically on my anger and frustration with the American government for lying to the people for so many years. Mm-hmm. My anger and frustrations of the American media and the public itself of not paying attention, not being interested, not giving a damn, not seemingly willing to even care about this greatest story in human history. Mm-hmm. So it was a little bit of both. I think their involvement has been a major factor, and I think my own decision, as I began to realize over the years who I was, I mean literally, spiritually, who I was and why I came here.
But you've told the story in the first interview of finding this book and going into a safe while you were a command sergeant major?
Well, I was a master sergeant at the time.
Okay. And the name of the book is
An Assessment.
An Assessment. And this was when you were in Europe, right?
When I was at SHAPE headquarters in Paris.
Okay.
I got there in 1963.
Okay. So at that point, you knew, I'm going to assume that the memories that you're talking about, even when you were 3 years old, were these gone? Had they been buried and then were triggered? Was there any kind of interaction that you actually had prior to that or after that?
When I first was exposed to the assessment in the war room in shock in Paris in 1964, after it was published in the summer of '64, I read it, and it was a bit of a shock, and there was also another factor, Carrie, where I said, you know, kind of, I've known this. I've been aware of this. This is not really that big a surprise to me. Reading it on paper, seeing it in this cosmic top secret document, made an impact. You know, the military, for 3 years have been studying this. No, the whole thing, the assessment I told you before was about that thick, but it was filled with, there was annexes and appendices, 10 of them. And I read the books, I read the appendices, the annexes, I looked at the photographs, I studied the autopsies, There was a crash in northern Germany, for God's sake, where they retrieved a crash of